place in America. Holy shit! This is fucking stupid! Bro! What the fuck are you doing, dude? What are you doing?
Peace, everybody. We're about to go live. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Peace, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I got to turn this down.
Hope you didn't adjust it. Hope you didn't adjust it.
You know that?
Yeah.
You can't. Can you move it? All right. Yeah, just about to get started. Our guest should be tapping in with us soon.
Go to the camera. Go to the camera so you can check the angle before you do that.
Yeah. Oh no, we good. We've already done this. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, tapping into Instagram, our Instagram feed. Okay, we got 17 watching now. Thank y'all for tuning in. It's going to be getting started. Today's topic. How you doing? Okay, Greg Marble, Senior, peace.
You got the number?
Serious. Cyrus Suit 888, peace. Okay. Kataba from Ohio, peace, peace. Anthony Herring, peace, brother. Good to have you. Thank you for tapping in.
It's a lot.
Okay. Love Legacy, peace. So I got my Instagram going and this YouTube going. So as soon as our guest taps in, Aseer the Duke of Tears. We're gonna get this started. Anybody have any questions, anything? Just put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to address any of your questions. Prince B. Charles, peace. How you doing? T13 made it. Good to have y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And today we will not be dealing with any type of debates. There ain't gonna be no backdooring nobody. Everything's gonna be straight up, above the board, respectful. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna have good conversations, and we're gonna try and move forward. You know what I mean? Within these conversations. So, and we're just chilling right now. Patience. How's everybody's day? Everybody good? Yeah, we're gonna try and drop some more jewels for y'all. You know. Unbeknownst to people, Aseer is somebody who actually inspired me to, you know what I'm saying, be more active in what was considered the conscious community at an earlier point. You know what I mean? So this is a conversation. Peace to the gods, peace. This is a conversation that's actually been in the making for a long time. But we'll discuss that as soon as the brother gets here. Hope y'all tuned in for the last show we did. The brother Two Hawks, brother brother always brings great information, good energy. Hopefully we'll revisit that at some point. Get into that conversation even more, a little more in depth. Yeah, definitely gonna have Two Hawks back. Looking to have a lot of good guests on here, and have some real intelligent conversation. Leave all that other stuff behind us. So yeah. Thank you, bro. We try to do our best. We try to have you tap in with Two Hawks. Okay, he's on Facebook. Raymond Watson. He's also on Instagram. Two Hawks Speaks. So you reach out to him. He's very attentive. You know what I mean? He'll definitely hit back. As long as it's not antagonistic, we're trying to get away from all that. You know what I mean? So yeah, and if he taps in tonight, maybe he'll have something to offer to the conversation. Who did my genealogy? Okay, so to tell my story about my genealogy, my particular family's genealogy, we always had. We were part of, communities that rose up in the 1800s. And we kept our own genealogy. My great-great-great-grandfather actually possessed the town records and passed those records on down to who was our town physician, Dr. Parker. And Dr. Parker served pretty much everyone in my community, all the youth, people of color. He was like our town doctor, you know what I'm saying? And there's actual interviews where he speaks about being given the genealogy of not just a family, but a whole community. And he was given that genealogy, well, his father was given that genealogy by a man named Peter Rock, who would be my fifth-time great-grandfather. So, fortunately for my family, peace, Josh, my cousin in the building, Ramapo in the building. So, fortunately for my family, we were able to, we've always had our genealogy before Ancestry.com, before all these sites that started to put this information together for people, OCO. So that's one of the reasons why me and a couple of my family members kind of felt it was a bit of our responsibility to light the way for those who might not have such a bright torch. If you understand what I'm saying, your history, that's the eternal flame you're supposed to keep burning. The same way we keep the eternal flame burning, you're supposed to keep it burning by passing that information on. So that's something that my family was very, they were very diligent about that. And, that's how my family retained our genealogy. But, for those of you who don't, there's methods that you can go out and get it. A lot of people will try to sell you that, but it just takes hard work. Takes a combination of, using a combination of different sources, and just being diligent. How do you go beyond online sources? So what I would suggest is that at some point you're going to have to literally go to these. Yeah, you can get a genealogist, or at some point you're going to have to go to these actual places and go look in their local libraries and sit down with people and create relationships with people who work in these libraries. Because a lot of times they'll have archives of footage that they're not going to show or give access to the average person. There's actual archive footage that we have in the local libraries in Red Bank. And the only reason the person allowed us to view it is because we showed them we were family members. And that's when they started pulling out a lot of archive footage that just isn't available to the general public. So at some point, it's like you're going to have to actually go to these places, because although we live in a, everything is being archived online, there's still a lot of stuff that they haven't got to yet. You know what I mean, in terms of microfilm and different files like that. So at some point, yeah, you're going to have to really physically go to these places. Or you could get a certified genealogist and pay a little bit of bread, and then take that information, and if you're concerned about the genealogist not being able to read it properly because of the reclassifications and that, once you get the actual genealogy, you can now look into that on your own. But yeah, I would suggest that, at this point, I mean, you could spend years doing it, or you could pay somebody, somebody who's certified to do it for you. Now, how they interpret the results, I mean, that's up to you to, if they don't know about the reclassification of our people and things of that nature, that's fine. You know what I mean? Once you get the information, you can start to research all that on your own. Yeah, so if all your elders and your great aunts and stuff are gone, talk to their friends. Yeah, see what friends they had. See if any of their friends are still alive, people they grew up with. Talk to them and possibly get information. You know what I mean? Talk to the children. So, but once again, if you speak to a professional genealogist, they'll know all the ins and outs of these things. They've been doing it for years. You know what I mean? It's their job. So, Ben Skywalker, peace, bro. Digging this copper. Okay, our guest is here. About to bring him in. Okay, peace, brother.
Peace, bro.
How you feeling?
I'm well, my brother. How are you, man?
Okay. Good to have you on the show. Thank you very much for being here and giving us some of your time.
Thank you, bro.
As I stated before, just to get the formalities out the way. Briefly, when we was having a conversation on the phone earlier, I let you know that you were actually somebody who I was inspired to be more active in what was the conscious community. I guess it would be in the early 2000s or whenever, when I first started seeing the movements that was going on. We had met at Long Island University, I believe. It might have been a Bobby Hemmett.
Back in the days, big up to Bobby Hemmett.
Yeah, back in the day. So, ever since then, I think you had left New York not too long after that. So we never
2008.
had an opportunity to connect. But all things come in time. You know what I mean? So first of all, I want to get any of the awkwardness out the way that might have come about, because not everybody in these communities agrees on everything. You know what I mean? So outside of that, you know what I mean, I'm looking at new ways to deal with confrontations and things of that nature. You know what I mean? A lot of times it has to do with how you internalize things. You know what I'm saying? So
Indeed.
I'm taking the responsibility on myself as opposed to looking at others. You know what I'm saying? So this is a part of my new approach. You know what I mean? Sitting down and having real intelligent conversation. So obviously you're well known, but for those who might not know, and just for myself, if you could just give a little background on your history and what brought you into the Morris science.
Well, first, thanks again for having me. Tatanka, peace to your audience. Salam, Abaragani. So many of our people speak so many different languages and come from different clans, and we just want to give respect to everybody. So thanks for having me with that. In terms of my beginnings in it, it's the same as most people, came up in Brooklyn, I would say with a conscious mother, blessings to my mother. Her birthday just passed. And, you know, my father was active in the music industry, you know what I'm saying, as well as the literary, like journalism. So I was exposed to a lot of stuff, you know, early, whereas a lot of my friends, peers, you know what I'm saying, who didn't have that type of stuff, you know what I mean? That was still a time where like you could still be cool with people like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could be cool with people that wasn't into the stuff you was into. You know what I'm saying? And still be all right. And it wasn't a political thing. So being exposed to all of that and then having a certain degree of understanding growing up, I really wasn't aware of, you know, race, racism, things like that, just like everybody else until a certain point. And then once I started, you know, really getting into it, you know, I went through the phases. Like I went through the, you know, the angry phase, which was like demonstrated through, like, I would say, like my Black Power, you know what I'm saying, situation where it's like, okay, the police, the, you know what I mean, the white man, you know, all of that type of stuff. And then a friend of mine and myself ran into a person from the Nation of Gods and Earths, and then gave me a whole different perspective on all of that. You know what I'm saying? And then that's what kind of opened me up to like looking at our people in different ways as opposed to just one blanket.
So let me just say peace to the gods on earth, you know, very
Peace.
important chamber that we all came through. I came through that chamber, the youth of my whole community came through that chamber, you know what I mean?
Islam.
Understanding
Islam,
God.
man. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the basis. And then that, you know, they would tell us stuff like in the Supreme lessons, like, you know, X amount of land is allotted to the original man, X amount of land is allotted to the half original man. You know what I'm saying? The Indians make up like, what was it, like 9% or something like that, 9 million or whatever. So
18 plus 2 million Indians.
Islam, thank you, plus 2 million Indians. And then in that, that opened me up. And then around that same time, my grandmother, blessed her dead, started going out with a dude who was the attaché to the ambassador of Gambia. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, being who we are, born here, and then having somebody from there, I'm trying to like understand and get knowledge on, you know, the motherland and all this stuff from him. And he the first one that told me, like, you're not African though. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not, your grandmother, like y'all not African. Like, I'm African. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm from the Gambia or whatever. Y'all from Mississippi and Louisiana and all that. So you should get more into that. So back then I thought he was bugging because, you know, I'm listening to X-Clan and Public Enemy and Two Kings and a Cypher and all of this quote unquote conscious rap. And then I'm rapping myself, and then I'm in the Nation and Gods and Earth. So I'm trying to get my pen, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing the knowledge to the lessons and the alphabet and all of that. And then that verb, what I didn't realize at the time was also creating like positive currents and negative currents. And so in seeing like people that's giving me the knowledge, but then seeing like them not necessarily like living that, you know what I'm saying? Or like, you know what I mean? It became like discouraging to a certain degree. So, you know, I'm seeing like people's enlighteners like coked out, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. And then in the RBG side, I'm seeing people like going to jail, get beat up by the police all the time, you know what I'm saying? Like protesting, like, you know what I'm saying? So then I'm looking at the street people. They always gonna be the same, always doing what they doing. But then outside of that, it was only like back then there was the Nubian Islamic Hebrews, Dr. York, and they was out there So by the time they transitioned from that to the Nuwapians, like in between that era is when I think I discovered or came across more science indirectly through another elder who passed named Bilal Muhammad, peace be upon him. He used to have a store down the block from Spike Lee's joint.
Fort
And
Crane?
yeah, right over there, right across the street from Park. And he used to, he used to sell like books, incense, stuff like that. And one day I came there because he was cool with my mom. Somehow he was cool with my mother somehow, I think through her girlfriend. So she sent me there to pick up something from him one day. When I went there, I was bugging at all of the books, the culture stuff, you know. And then he had this book on the counter that said 100,000 African horsemen. And when I opened the book, they had a map in it, and in all of Western Africa, it just said Moors, 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 right? So I'm like, well, what's that? You know, what's Moors? He's like, you don't know what Moors are? He said, that's you. I said, what you talking about? I said, Moors, like, what's that? He said, that's our culture. So I was like, you know what I mean? At this time now, I'm doing the knowledge to the American Indian side of my family now. So now I found out that, you know, we Southern Creek, we got family from deep in the bayou in Montville, Louisiana. So I'm doing all that. So I'm like, yeah, well, you know, so I started picking that. And he's like, yeah, but you know, you can be more than one thing. He said, matter of fact, tomorrow is our anniversary in which we dress in habit and ride the horses, because he was an equestrian. And we ride the horses through the hood. You should come out and, you know, see it. I've told the story before, but this is what kind of sparked it. So the next day, I'm out there. I was on the block just messing around, and I almost forgot. So I was like, oh, let me run, you know, get down there. So I get down there right when they mounting up. And it was like, it was like seeing like, it was like just being transported. Like when he said he was going to be in habit and stuff, I'm thinking like quote unquote Muslim type clothes. You know what I'm saying? These brothers, bro, they was decked out like in the royal garb, the feathers and all of that, and the spear and the you know what I'm saying? Like was really doing it.
Yeah.
With the horses now. And this is in Fort Greene. This is like, you know what I'm saying? So he was like, yo, you should, you know, we're gonna be down, we're gonna ride through. So if you want to meet us here, you could jump on the train, whatever, or just walk with us, or just hop on and shit. I was like, nah, I can't even. Like I ain't even trying to. Like I was in like Tim's, and you know what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm not even messing that whole vibe up, like, you know what I'm saying? So that's when I realized, like, wow, this is something real. Like this is real. So from that point on, I started investigating, and then right after that is when I discovered the Prophet, you know, Muhammad Ali, and then through that, the Morning Science Temple of America, and then the rest, you know what I'm saying, was history per se. But in all of that, the underlying current in all of the movements was like a lot of the set tripping. You know what I mean? A lot of the like, well, you can't be this and that, but it's like I could get that on a certain level, but when you start to like choose this ancestor allegedly over this one, or this, you know what I'm saying? That's like choosing which relative you get the blessings from. Like we don't know where these blessings and this drive to be what we believe we are is coming from all the time. And it's us, but it's a genetic thing that's passed down to us. So I can't say my so-called Tsalagi ancestor was somehow more this than my West African one or Persian one, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that kind of carried with me to kind of like see everybody as Moors, whether they see themselves as that or not. Because I was taught, or we're taught that when the prophet said, "Come all ye Asiatics," he wasn't discriminating on which ones should come, whether they was Christian, Buddha, whatever. Because in the end, it's not really about like, it's about you having pride in yourself and seeing that reflective in another that's now connected to this ancient thing that we use to carry ourselves into the future from the past, you know.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that obviously, you know, we both came on the East Coast. You in Brooklyn, I'm in Jersey. You know what I mean? But a lot of the same influences. You know, primarily, you know, 5% Nation. You know what I mean? That was very influential in our youth. And also Moorish Science Temple. So just to piggyback off your story, you know, to show how similar, like, the culture, like what we was going through in those periods is, I can tell you that I was introduced to Moorish Science about 1982, right? And that's when I became, I was old enough to ask questions. My uncle, now get this, my uncle, his name is, currently he goes by Noble Justice L. Bay. He's been Noble Justice since the 80s, okay?
So from the 80s, right?
From the 80s.
Word.
And he studied under Sun Ra, right? So I know you're familiar with.
I was just thinking about Sun Ra today, bro. That's crazy you say that.
Bro,
go ahead,
let me tell you. So my uncle's home, and I have pictures of it, had an 8-foot scarab beetle painted on the eastern wall, facing the ocean. You know what I mean? The whole house was like a Kemetic temple.
Islam.
So
that's a blessing, bro. You came up.
Yeah, it was a blessing. You know what I mean? We grew up with the, you know, obviously we called it the Book of the Dead. You know what I mean? We were kids. You know, we grew up with it sitting in the house, paintings all over the home. You know what I mean? And my uncle, who got into this through Sun Ra, my uncle was actually he was a DJ, right? He was an electrician and a DJ, and he developed Sun Ra's light system, right? So anybody that knows about touring or is into it knows that Sun Ra was one of the first people to have a light show.
That's right.
Accompanying his musical performance. My uncle, coming from the engineering background, incorporated those things into the show. You know what I mean? So he would be one of the people that kind of created the lights pulsating to the beat and different phenomena taking place in the show. And he was doing that with Sun Ra. Sun Ra, in turn, you know, his whole camp was all under Moorish Science. This is what he was, Kemetic and Moorish Science. So that's how my uncle got introduced to Moorish Science. I remember Sun Ra coming to the crib, and he was an intimidating figure. His eyes, you know what I mean? Like, so we remember like having to clean up because Ra's coming. Everybody's coming. Everybody's going crazy to clean up the house. And then as kids, he would come in and he would be such a powerful figure, and these eyes just like we were almost scared of him, you know what I mean? But it was a reverence. The presence he held. But the ironic thing about it is my uncle, Noble Justice L. Bay, is born Kenneth Mann. Kenneth Mann is the direct bloodline of the lineage of Man, which are Ramapo Lenape Indians. And Chief Mann is one of the signatories in the first treaty that allowed the United States to exist, the Treaty of Fort Pitt, right? So
Fort Pitt, that's right.
So to show how, like, what we discussing was very much interwoven, you know what I mean? We're talking about a man who was of Ramapo Lenape ancestry, but he's taking on the, he joined the Moorish Science Temple. And when it was first explained to us, it was kind of explained like, as long as you ain't got no trouble, you can join the Moorish Science Temple, and it's gonna almost make you so you're exempt from, certain laws. Now that's just what we got as kids. Obviously, that's not what it really was, but that's what we learned as kids. But the demonstrations I saw, truthfully, was my uncle being defiant in the face of law, police, demonstrating his, driving without a license, and those demonstrations put his family through a lot. You know what I'm saying? Caused a lot of stress on the family. And, you know, it's not something that as a child you grow up having great memories of seeing your uncle get beat up in the street because he don't got a license and he's being defiant.
Because he's not demonstrating and he's trying to stand up for rights, or demonstrating in a manner that even though he right, it's not coming out correct. And that's giving them an instance to take it up to another level. I agree.
Yeah. So as youth, it affected us in a way to where, you know, we didn't really look to it as any type of remedy. Now, but what I will tell you is that knowing our ancestry, knowing that we, you know, who we are, we descend from Lenape and Cherokee people, it was like, well, why are we so engulfed into Kemetic culture? Like, what is the, you know what I mean? And it was explained to me by my aunt that the beauty and art of Kemetic culture is something we can learn from. And it's something that was more, it embodied the energy of what our cultures would have been like before colonization. So it was almost like pre-dynastic Kemetic culture was a blueprint for those of us who had kind of been stripped of our culture, because it was something that spoke directly to nature. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is why I grew up with a heavy influence of Kemetic culture. Also grew up knowing exactly who I was, still living in the territories. You know what I mean? So there's always been, at least in my life, there's always been a blending of the two. You know what I mean? If not actual African and native, the African influence over natives, and all this having to deal with the oppression we was facing, and many of us being thrown in the same pot together. You know what I'm saying? And figuring out a way to come up out of this. So just a little bit, that's, you know, so I can identify with everything you're speaking on in terms of, you know, being introduced to these different chambers of study. You know what I mean? So
because when you think about it, not to cut your wisdom, when you think about it, all of those are like, we experienced that in America. So those, by us receiving that on our soil, you see what I'm saying? And then still maintaining connection to what we already are, that's what makes those indigenous as well. You think what I'm saying? Because it's coming from people who was born here, who have a certain understanding. Now, certain practices are, in a sense, could be perceived as more foreign to us than others. You know what I'm saying? However, I feel like a lot of the differences that we have with one another is just based upon our the customary laws that we adhere to in our present circumstance. So some people, it's hard for them to see themselves in other people. So if so certain Moors, for instance, like if you use the term black around them, it's like you pulled out garlic on a vampire. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I get it. There's a time and a place. However, if this individual still identifies as such, you dig what I'm saying? And they take pride in that, it's maladaptive for me to correct them outside of the proper usage, maybe, of when to use that. Like, for that inference, based upon the fact that that term has a surety connection, whether you know it or not, to the present legislative structure that allows for these inhuman practices to accompany people who get identified like that. You understand what I'm saying? But that doesn't mean that because this person is identifying as that, I should look at them like they not about their liberation. You dig what I'm saying? Absolutely. And the same afforded to me. Because the enemy is the ones that the actual enemy is the ones that don't look like us, but the true enemy is the ones that look like us, that are secretly basically working together at the top of all of these groups. Okay,
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Clubs. You know what I'm saying?
We're gonna get there. let it simmer a bit. We're gonna get there.
Word.
But so basically the conversation that I'm interested in having today, right? And we've already begun certain aspects of it. I deem it the genealogy of the Aboriginal movements. And I'm talking about the specific movements that are emerging today, right? You've mentioned a lot of the influences that lead up, right? 5%, Nation of Islam, Dr. York's movements, Moorish movements, you know what I mean? So I want to speak about today's representation of what we call, and there's multiple ones out here. I guess it's the FBA. You got the Aboriginal movement. You got
Foundational Black Americans.
Copper Tone.
Descent from slaves. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Ado, whatever. All these things. So I want to talk about the genealogy or what led to the emergence of these philosophies. Because I remember about 10, 12 years ago, people didn't want to hear anything about you not being from Africa. You know what I'm saying? Like,
word.
Now it's almost flipped completely. And it's like, if you connect yourself to Africa, you're an outlaw. You know what I'm saying? So
you see what I'm saying? It's swung the other way.
Yeah, it's completely flipped the whole, like 360. So what I've noticed, or what I would like to start the conversation with, is there was a time when no one was talking about we're indigenous outside of the native communities, of which those native communities were not including people that we would consider colored, Negro, or Black, right?
Right.
So the first people that I heard publicly making these claims and speaking to this were the Moors, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, I told you I was educated, or I was introduced to Moorish science in '82 as a child. I did not revisit it until I was well into my 30s, when I started to attend classes by like Taj Tariq, Ali Muhammad, right, at the National Black Theater. Wow. That's when I started to get my deeper education on what this Moorish movement was. And I was drawn to it because they said we're the indigenous people. And me having my family history, knowing who we are, I'm like, oh, somebody's having this conversation. I need to go hear what's being said. You know what I mean? So this is why I say, prior to the Moors making these claims and putting this information out, people were not claiming to be indigenous Americans, not at the rate that they are now. So if you could just speak a little bit on that, because I know you were engulfed in that, in the scene, in the movement, back when I just was stepping into it. So if you could just speak a little bit on that.
Islam, I appreciate that. For me, when I really like, okay, I'm a Moor and I'm going to pursue this understanding. When I got to that level, for me, it was really about getting to the root, you know. So unfortunately, the path is beset on both sides, you know what I'm saying, by people who have the right intention, right? But they may have been taught the wrong way. They may have been taught more science in a whole nother way, based upon coming from one of the three factions that came from the schism that happened after the Prophet returned to that. So in dealing with that, I realized early on, if I'm gonna get anything from this, I gotta get it like myself. Like I can't go to somebody else. It's like save yourself, like in the alphabet, you know what I'm saying? Self-savior. So I really got into that and started to put more trust in my own experience and knowledge, because at the time I was also going through family court, you know what I mean, with
I remember
dealing with that stuff. And you know, it sobers you up real quick, and then it fast tracked me in learning how to understand how government works as per how I'm being told by people on the street. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So at a certain point, I realized that it's all more science. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all more science in the end. So if it's physics, it's more science. If it's oncology, if it's eschatology, it's more science. If it's navigation, it's more science. If it's cooking, it's more science. Like, so once I looked at it like that, it took me out of just the dogma aspect, right? And it made me see and think about the man who founded it in a whole different way. Like reading the Circle 7, reading the oral statements and stuff, and then seeing how little things have changed, if not regressed. It really made me realize that certain things stood out. Like when you said, when the European got here, there was Moors up and down the Mississippi River. If we look at historically who was up and down the Mississippi River, that's mad clans or so-called tribes, as they say. You know what I mean? Who today they refer to as Native American. But see, me personally, I think that there's a distinction between a Native American and an American Indian. The American Indian is a copper-colored melanated person. And the Native American is one of the Siberian people that came over with in the 13th century with the whole Macedon invasion and all of that. You know what I'm saying? That they don't get into. But in reading that, that's when I was realizing, well, there's a connection between these people. You know what I mean? Who they're calling Moors. Because at this time, I'm going through this, they still making it seem like Moors is white people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would be hard pressed to find like real subject matter. At the time, it was only people like Hakeem Bey from the Moorish paradigm. Big up to him. Jose Pimenta Bey, Ivan Van Sertima. You know what I'm saying? That was credible. Like, you could really go in off what they showing you. J.A. Rogers, all his books and stuff. But outside of like day to day, and then by the time I actually came to like a temple and going through that, you know what I mean? It just showed me like the difference between like what, again, I'm reading and seeing and what the overall movement was to be. So then that made me investigate even more. And that's when I started seeing like there was this whole thing about this guy, you know, really anchoring the undoing the Marcus Garvey thing, while at the same time still giving him honors to a degree. Because for all intents and purposes, Garvey did bring many different types of melanated people together for a common cause. However, whether you think he was a charlatan or he was used or whatever, it doesn't change the fact that when he was gone, there was a huge vacuum. And the prophet stepped in and basically let the Garveyites know that you could actually be a part of something that also connects you to North Central South America or whatever. Because the fact is, we're the indigenous people, we're the original people of these places. Yeah. And then from there, and bringing all of that in, is when he started talking and writing, you know, about that type of stuff. And in that, it engendered a whole generation. You see what I'm saying? That got to a point where they needed to get people in there and turn that part off. You see what I'm saying? So that way they could restart it under this whole new fake paradigm, because now they got these new people that they referring to as Indians based on the Indian Act, which is really a Civil Rights Act, right? That puts them in a dual position in which now those same ones can now claim to be what they weren't, to be able to maintain long-term homogeneity over the land, while still segmenting these people who already feel somewhat segmented from the greater so-called Black population, because the Black population is still under the Pan-American stuff, you know what I mean? Or cultures, and they have adopted it to believe it is them. But I've spoken to Africans, and the ones that I've spoken to never told me that they found any stories of them selling people like us over here. You dig what I'm saying? From different parts of the continent. So I know it's not a thing, but at the same time, they'll still call us Akatas. They'll still go with the story. You dig what I'm saying? Because everybody is benefiting off of our lack of understanding that the Aboriginal thing or the original thing is tying you to the land. But when you say you're tied to the land, that also gives you proprietary control.
Mm-hmm.
And to negate that, they needed to splinter the divine and national movement and move it into a Black liberation theology thing. You see what I'm saying? And then from the Black liberation theology thing, they're moving further away from the indigenous thing. You see what I'm saying? They're also marginalizing anybody that's really from the original movement that knew what it was really about, that now can't be down with it because the people that's sitting in those seats are agents. You see what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And then that Black liberation theology thing eventually gets joined in now through the COINTELPRO thing into a Marxist communist thing. And then that Marxist communist thing becomes the model for so-called Black liberation, which then takes them out of the American thing, you see what I'm saying, out of the indigenous thing, and now makes them enemy combatants to the state, in which then this trickled down to other nationalities that thought this was a way to go. That's where you get the young lords from. That's where you get armed from. The American Indian Revolutionary thing, whatever it's called. It was a whole like Black Panther thing just for Native Americans on the reservation.
Yeah.
And they needed to keep all of these little things away from the head, which at the time was the Panther thing. You see what I'm saying? Because the Panther thing, the Civil Rights thing, remember the Civil Rights Act is still listed as the Indian Rights Act. So the civil rights that they put Blacks under is really still for so-called people who are Indian, which then is proven that the Blacks are the so-called Indians. But those Indians, you see what I'm saying, or some of those so-called people referring to themselves as Indians were referring to themselves as that based upon the Los Indios contracts that the old people we call the conquistadors and these people had already set in place, because Indies, the three Indies, there was one Indies in Europe, excuse me, one Indies in Africa, one Indies in America, and one Indies in Europe. So the three Indies that they were dealing with, anybody that was on those lands that they felt they had proprietary rule to were then referred to as Indians. You see what I'm saying? And that became the process by which they would distinguish who was going to be who, because they didn't want anybody to go back to the ruling power at the time, which again was the Moorish Empire that had been fractured. If you notice, most of these conflicts is coming after 1492, after the 1300s, when all of this stuff started to play, and now people from what we call Europe, which is really Asia, started to try to create differences based on the customary laws of the individuals they were trying to encroach on due to their expulsion, you see what I'm saying, from whatever area they was at. But these Europeans that was doing this looked like us. But the difference was they brought their woodwolves, they Slavic serfs with them, you see what I'm saying? And in some cases sent their serfs to do their bidding for them. And in return, by those serfs, these whites or whatever, taking those lands, they now could have renting those places. See what I'm saying? In the name of these people. But because you see it's a white dude, you think that it's him that's owning it, when really he's taking the name of some lord, you see what I'm saying, who pulled him out the dirt and then put him in position to then take our position, in which now you can stay on the land if you agree to go with the program, in which now you're not a noble, you're just a Negro, Indian, colored, African, whatever. So that affects everybody.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the end results, right? So the end result of what you're speaking on, like I can attest to that. The end result, right? The small nuances in the journey.
Yeah, that's the details.
That's the deep. Those are the things that, okay, as an individual, I would say, okay, I got to research and see it for myself. But that's mathematics. You know what I mean? That's not personal. That's mathematics. But the end result of what you're speaking on is absolutely true, because that's the story of my family. We were able to stay on our land, but we lost our status. right? Which leads to taxes, us being taxed for the land that in the time we didn't think we had to pay taxes for, because in our minds, we the Indians, we've been here. But because the paperwork got changed, after 50 years, they come hit you with taxes. You ain't paid taxes on this land in 50 years. And at this point, the people who have inherited the land don't even know what these people are talking about. Like, what do you mean
because they
on our land?
They took them out of the republic and then put them into a democracy. Once they were in a democracy, they put them into a corporate fiction. Then once they put them into a corporate fiction, they put them into a human chattel. Once they was in human chattel, they now became human capital. That's where we at right now.
Okay.
So everybody technically is human capital. And remember, under the Indian Act, it said that they would no longer recognize Indians as a nation. They would only recognize them as individuals. This is in the Act of Congress of 1871, in which they stripped the power from the individuals because they couldn't. Because the real ones, like there's a difference between a Kitwa or a Kitwa Ananuia, right, than a Cherokee. You dig what I'm saying? Or there's a difference between the Tasalagi, you know what I mean, and a modern white Cherokee. You dig what I'm saying? Like there's difference. If they're using the European name, you see what I'm saying? Which is the English translation of it. That's the G. That's what allows them to anchor it themselves into the fiction, because they bought their way in.
Yeah,
and then ever since then, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I can attest to that, because what a lot of people, like the steps they moved us in, you had territories that would be considered tribal territories. And in order to do anything on them territories, you had to get the tribe had to agree on it, right? Now, if you can put the tribe up into individual families and assign the land to the individual families, you can now broker deals with those families and not the nation. So when we talk about we have deeds, land that's in deeds, and it's our family deeds, that's evidence of the point in time in which they broke up our tribal unions and they separated the land into individual family members, which now, once you put it on paper, right, now that paper can be traded, can be sold, bought and sold.
Right.
So, as I stated
brought
before,
you into the fiction, democracy.
It puts you into the fiction, exactly.
And then they keep you in there selling the paper back and forth between each other while you're trying to get it. And so what is, people get tired of, and they go into the next best thing, or what they see as less hassle. And what's that? The Negro, the black designation. You see what I'm saying? We don't want to go to the Moorish thing, because we done basically killed everybody in the clans that was even talking about that. Like that was a secret thing sometimes kept amongst clans that was holding the fire, what they call the fire keepers. Those fire keepers were the ones that had access to that type of knowledge, that they was connected to a greater situation. That's why you had so many so-called clans that was able to speak all these ancient languages, because this was an ancient thing of the Moors. We're the ones that kept all of that ancient priesthood going and disseminated it through a lot of the different clans that had already descended from the root. Because at one time, remember, the whole planet was such that, or the whole plane was such that you could walk from one part to the next. So
absolutely.
We would use oceans and stuff like rivers, but we keep going by their time frame for this and their map version of this. When anytime we see a map today, we're supposed to reverse that in our mind, make it upside down, first of all, because that also shows you the consistency in how our people, regardless to where we was at, kind of kept certain customs that allowed us to reestablish ties with one another. That's why you can have a tribal name, which is your family name, and then you can have your clan's name, which is the thing that's tying you to the international side, the imperial side, the Moorish side. That's where the Bay come in. So like, I'm a Rogers, right? I'm a Southern Creek Rogers. That's also on my father's side. On my mother's side, right, I'm Washoe, which they also refer to as Raccoon or Washita, right? But that's also Yamasee, because remember the Creek and the Yamasee went to war. You know what I'm saying? At one point, and then they got together, and then in that, another clan came out of that they're calling the Seminole. You see what I'm saying? Who they mistakenly saying he run away, but I don't believe that. Like running away, why would we be running away from something when these people still had their own nations? So that's the Rogers, right? Or that's the Rogers Wilson, or in my case, Rogers. But then Eel, you see what I'm saying? That's the Moorish clan. You see what I'm saying? That adds to the tribe. So when they working together, I got the power over the land, power over the sea. You see what I'm saying? And we unified that when we were working together at places like Mount Moriah and some of the ancient mosques and stuff that's been here, that they repurposed and turned into something else. So it made us believe that we didn't build. Like our peoples wasn't like nomads like that. Our peoples is the ones that built with these mounds, these cities, these things. The nomads were the Siberians that wasn't from here, that was living in wigwams and wickiups up in the plains and all of that we gave reserves to. That and that forest culture, or those Moors that were responsible for them, gave them an aspect of their name because they were the stewards of them. They were the big buffalo people over these ones that's now adopting a name because they had been bled in. So you got the Moors, then you got the Zambos, then you got the Chiquino, the Chicanos, then the Chicos, the Chicanos, the Mestizos, the Spaniards. You see what I'm saying? Like it's all coming out the same thing.
So I'm gonna try and find a
But the treaty and land and all that, that's the part that they need to ixnay. So they deaded the Moorish connection. So you stop talking about business to the land, and they get you start talking about Africa and Europe and all of that. You dig what I'm saying? And then that becomes our focus. Pan-Africanism becomes the thing that's marketed to us all. However, most of these African so-called nations, well, at the time was only like 20 years old. It was like 30 years old. So how could they be giving us back a culture that they just got freed up for themselves, that was still infested? They still wearing European wigs in Parliament over there. So how are we getting our so-called real culture of us being born here from them? I don't get it.
Okay, so
we need to know that because they're our cousins and stuff, but I don't think that we as native, autochthonous born beings from this hemisphere need to totally assimilate and get rid of what we naturally are to be like them. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so now there's I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there's a Lakota elder. He's passed away now. I can't recall his name. I'm gonna find the information for you. But this is something I've sat on for a while. I know some people who are aware of this literature, right? But he speaks about how Native Americans had an ally, and that ally was responsible for. They are the ones who are responsible for the actual laws that we are living under now, right? And basically, he was talking, and there's a treaty that exists, and I believe it sits in, I think not the Pima, somewhere in North, in New Mexico. There's actually a treaty that sits there. I'm gonna find the information, but
You might be talking about the Eagle Bowl Treaty. I'm not sure though.
Well,
I'm more.
Yeah, that's a part of it. The Eagle Eye Treaty, it's can be accessed in that book. Yeah. So if you're familiar with that, then you know about this Lakota elder, and he's the elder that represented the unified Lakota case against the United States. So he wasn't just you know what I mean? He was an international lawman. He was a medicine man.
I remember that case back in the
day. Yeah. So he speaks on a treaty and us being allied with the Moors. You know, he speaks on a time when he was taught about them sailing up the Mississippi. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I know there is truth to an ancient union and alliance that took place between certain indigenous nations here and the Moorish nation. Like I know that to be.
There's a book called Time Walker by Meredith Quinn.
Yeah, Time Walker. That's what I'm talking about. Meredith Quinn.
That's exactly. You're talking about Meredith Quinn. Yeah. Time Walker, B. That's the one. You got the. I've seen the giant redwood engraving of the Pueblo city that the
Pueblos. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, it's a giant. Yeah, it's a giant rendering of it. But the actual joint is in the Brooklyn Museum, the British Museum. But yeah, that book is real good on it. There's another book written by a brother named Sultan Abdul Latif called When Nations Gather. It was real good getting into that. But yeah, this is the connections. Like, it's there. Everybody knows but us. Like, we were so revered around the world that people from other nations would come see us and then go back and then put our effigies and visages on their palaces and stuff. Also, that way they could curry favor with us when they would come back. Because remember, they was getting tobacco and all of that. Like, that was only growing here. Coffee, tobacco, cocaine. We was doing all of that. Hemp, we was rocking that in the ancient world from the time when they was calling us Phoenicians, from the time when they was calling us Carthaginians, from the times they was calling us Chaldeans, from the time they was calling us, all of these different whatever, from the ancient to now. So these trade routes, these things that we're in, were always stewarded by that class of people that descended from those group of high priests and priestesses, who they call Anu, who brought more, right, knowledge or wisdom, understanding to that. And then those people revered for that would be referred to as that for the religion of Islam. Moors existed before Noble Jawali. You know what I'm saying? And that's no disrespect to either one, but it is to say that our people are such that when those of us that are not learned or not into this level of investigation and building and stuff like that, they'll just go with what the Romans say it is. You dig what I'm saying? So if you've always seen these people and they're saying that they're the so-called Indian, but then, like, it's like watching movies like Gods of Egypt, and you seeing all of the pictures on the walls and everybody's mad dark skin, black, and all of that, and then the dude they got playing Anubis is like back Christian Bale, and then you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a degree of disconnect in the fantasy that can't exist. So all I'm saying is these different groups with their different agendas, even with the Moors, like I said, all of the groups are fractured based upon the things that I was saying earlier, based upon them wanting to move us away from the fact that we are already home, that we're already complete, that we already have a culture that's way older than hip hop, that if it didn't exist, hip hop wouldn't exist. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have to anchor ourselves so much to the norm when everybody else that's in the world takes their culture and puts whatever hip hop or whatever on top of that and rock with it. We want to just bleach. We want to rip off stuff, put on a dress, you know what I mean? Whatever, to just assimilate, knowing we never will. And that's because we are constantly thinking that we are ransomed victims instead of like POWs or people who have been disinherited unlawfully. You know what I'm saying?
All right, so at this point in time, like, there's been a shift, right? So there's been a shift, kind of like, at one point I would say that you had the Kemetic groups were kind of leading the way. The Hebrew groups stepped up. Before that, the RBG movements were paving the way. Seems like we're in a shift now where more of the conversation is about being indigenous Americans, right? And within that conversation, there's a divide. You know what I mean? There's people who are claiming the most extremes, You know what I mean? And then there's people who are speaking on a truth that is more in line with the complete world history as it's been told. You know what I mean? So where do you lie between these two? You know what I mean? Obviously, like when I say the extreme, I'm saying there's people out here saying things like Harriet Tubman didn't exist. You know what I mean? And Nat Turner didn't exist.
There's a lot of
There
wild
was no
stuff, but
slave trade. Like, so where do you lie, and how do you feel about where these movements are going? The Tariq Nasheed's and the FBA and all that. How do you feel about all that?
I don't believe any movement for the ultimate liberation of our people is going to come off of social media or the internet.
Okay.
Personally, because it's not a forum for us in that way. Like social media is just or the internet is just a physical version of the subconscious mind. You know what I'm saying? So only difference is you're able to tap into it consciously. You dig what I mean? And they have the algorithms and everything keyed up so much that you could say something and one of the devices in your crib pick up on it. And as soon as you go into your phone, as soon as you turn on TV, it's right there. So you're talking about instantaneous, simultaneous information access. So in a system like that, as soon as somebody make a plan, as soon as you put that down and you key and press send, everybody got that. So you're not going to be able to pop it off like that. I also don't believe that a lot of these movements are there for what they say they are. Like, you got to ask yourself, this word came out, ADOS, this word came out, FBOA. Who owns the trademark or the copyright on those words? And when you go out promoting and testifying and being a part of that, are you going to have to pay licensing fees to use that? You dig what I'm saying? Can you be shut down if this person doesn't like the fact that you found out that whoever owns the copyright really owns it? Now you want to expose it. Now you can't use the term itself. And then, like, that's more distraction. That's more stuff that's taken away from the overall thing. It's the same thing with all of these movements. They have great talking points that usually come from the movement before them.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like what that shows me is you got people from the last movement now putting on a new clothes, now putting on a new fez, putting on a new apron, putting on a new kippah, putting on a new sarong, right? A new burqa. Now they this now. You know what I'm saying? That was the problem with a lot of people that I started to see. That's not to say a lot. Certain people I would see come out of the Nuwapian situation. Like it was like I could be cool with, like I was cool with this dude for mad long, and then one day he just told me he was a Nuwapian. But all this time I'm thinking he's a Moor. You dig what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying. Like, be yourself. But it's such now that because the indigenous thing is there, because we've been banging on the door so long against this Negro black color thing, like as Moors, you know what I'm saying? Like just keeping the pressure on with that, because you can have different Moors with different opinions and different this and that, but when it comes to certain things, they all gonna be across the board. They all gonna be like this, you know what I mean? And if they not, something wrong. When it comes to knowing law, when it comes to learning physics, when it comes to knowing how to present yourself, when it comes to like what side the tassel or whatever's supposed to be, like certain things is uniform. But they just are not spoken, and people who are not Moors may not see that. The same way it is for people in RBG, same way it is for people in the Hebrews. You dig what I'm saying? If I'm not in the camp like that, then I don't know what is going on. I can only go about what I see on what? Social media. And social media is fake. Social media is fake. It's a fake subconscious created. It's a fake subconscious created to distract us from our own. So these movements, they all wind up the same way. Like there was like back in to get away from the Moorish temple, they broke that up into 3 different factions. You dig what I'm saying? And then from that 3 different factions, today you'll see like different remnants of that creating their own little joints. You know what I'm saying? None of them is getting directly to the goal, even though all of them may be claiming to do that. You see what I'm saying? Just like you got people in doing the same thing. But at the top of a lot of these movements, like I was saying, you got these guys who are working the same grift in all of the movements to keep the young bulls and the young queens from coming up and actually changing it towards the better. Like, to me, the Black Panther thing ended with Khaled, to me. You know what I'm saying? Once Khaled was gone, and Khaled, before he died, the first thing he said, he was a Moor. Remember that? He came out, declared his nationality before everybody, and then like 2 months later, he was dead. You see what I'm saying? So there's a power in that, especially if they always trying to throw dirt on it. If they always trying to throw dirt on it, there's something to it. You dig what I'm saying? Especially when the people that throw dirt is dirty themselves, or they're not as schooled as you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's Moors, based upon like what you just told me tonight about your upbringing, there's Moors who would presume, based upon stances that you've taken, that you are like anti that. But I never thought that. Me personally, you know what I'm saying?
I mean,
however,
I came up under the shadow of the Moorish Science Temple. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. But
Like,
but in
peripherally
us dialoguing,
influenced.
the people can see that. You dig what I'm saying? There's no there's nothing that actually gives you more credence in certain instances because you saw things in a sense in an earlier time. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of shaped you into you seeing that and having a nose for the BS when it comes to that. I tell people all the time, if you could be in a movement more than a year, you a vet. Because at every instance, there's people posing like this because it's kind of easy to get into.
Yeah.
However, it's very small, and there is a certain tenets that go with it, whether you in the temple or you not. Just like the street. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's no different because we're the same people. We're just working to evolve ourselves as that. But the way that these movements are structured now, they're all structured under the liberal ideologue, SJW, communist, Marxist, feminist thing. So it's not about dialogue. Dialogue today hurts people feeling so much that they get physically depressed. Therefore, they can't be exposed. This is how they have it. They can't be exposed to it. So hate speech, when they say they stopping you down from hate speech, they're not talking about you hating, you promoting hate speech. They're just saying they hate the speech you have. So they're shutting that down and replacing it with an algorithm or somebody that's going along with the narrative. All of that's being shut down now, though, with this Twitter thing happening with this dude, and with the Instagram thing happening, with the World War thing failing. All of this is a wrap. All of the blue states are like wastelands, whereas the red states is thriving. So they've already created the seeds for a civil war, for some bull BS, and then to exacerbate that with blowing up the food plants, because the food started coming in because Florida and other states saved the supply line, so the stuff was coming in. So what do? They got to blow it up. But they're not talking about that on social media. No. What are they talking about?
That's something my wife has been bringing up to me. She's kind of been on that, watching the situation with the food. And even I'm like, we gonna be all right. We not gonna, you know what I mean? But the conversation continues.
What state you in now?
Right now we're in 2 states. We're between DC and New York. So what I see in DC,
so you just might want to stock up because those are 2 strongholds for them.
Yeah,
well, not really DC.
In DC is very different than what I see in New York.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
New York, like
so I'm sure the more south you go, because it just seems like, you know, when I'm down here, it's like it's less. You know, when we're down in the DC area, there's there's less of an abundance. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if just because New York, the way where we situated, and
It's
if that's
because it's being run by the present establishment, and they all in the bed with China and all that and all of that. So all of that is, see, that's the other thing. See, the other thing about the indigenous thing people not understanding is that once you coalesce that thing properly, like we coalesce this thing properly, like if we was to, let's say, do it, let's say we form a confederation of different clans that say, we speak hypothetically, that say, okay, we're going to pool our collective faith in ourselves and our land and make this saying this is us, right? And then we say, okay, well, we're going to take this and we're going to turn this into we're going to take a aspect of this, set up a foundation, a charitable foundation, and we're going to set up a investment group for it. So this way, everything that the investment group is doing for the confederation is going into the charity, which then gets spread down to the people. But all of this is backed by the full faith and credit of us as so-called American Indians, Moorish Americans, whatever you call it, because the CDC done linked them both up on the website. So all of the debate is done. You type in Moors, it's going to take you to the southeastern tribes, and it's going to list every tribe from North, Central, South America. That's facts. I got that on my Facebook page. So they don't already done all of the work for us. So what are we still arguing about? So the question now becomes is, once we do that, now you know what we could do? We could establish an NGO for the preservation of these lands as natural preserves for our people. You know that, right? And we can charge tax on all of the people that's on that land right now. And all of the proceeds of that go into the trust itself. So we're not paying nothing.
So my question for this would be, because all right, so when we start talking about land, right, our land, people use that loosely, right? But the land, getting back to the deed situation, when the land is in our name as individuals, it can't be protected. Right?
Yes, but if those individuals are part of a tribal collective, that constitutes a nation.
That's the point I'm making. So the land, in order to be protected, right, has to be in possession of a nation, right? And when we talk about land, every parcel of land here in North America is tied to a nation, whether that nation still exists or is on paper or not, right? It still has a legal, historical connection. You know what I mean? My people are the Lenape. Our land is Lenape-Hoking. It's now called New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. But there's historical continuity, right? That says, like, even in the Treaty of Fort Pitt, the Lenape have a right to create their own state. They just never did it. But that was a part of the negotiation rights, and create their own state. So what I'm saying is that all these things are possible, but how do individuals who are not necessarily connected to tribal communities and nations that have been continual, like, how do you create organizations, and where do those organizations fit, and how do they work? Because, like, if anybody's going to have say-so over, like, the final say is going to be these individual nations that are in those territories, right? So how do we, and this is what brings me back to the Aboriginal movements that are going on now. How do we create a unity between people who are in search of a remedy, but are looking past the ones who could possibly give them that remedy? You understand?
You don't wait for those people to do it. You who have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to do it, bring forth the culture. You see what I'm saying? That creates the power that borns the equality, which then produces the gods who can then build and destroy and born a new cipher. So
true indeed.
It's really simple. It's this whole thing was never about getting everybody.
So the thing is,
getting those people who know they have to do it for everybody and make them do it.
Now,
like the
this is what,
of the room. Like they was all living a life. They wasn't together, but they had to get together to put the evil in check. And then once the evil got put in check, they all went back home.
Now, this is what's going on, right? So as you spoke earlier, what goes on the internet is not really per se the real work that's being done,
No,
right?
it's not.
But it's where the conversation is, and at this point in people's existence, the conversation they believe is the work, just talking about it, right?
Right,
Then
but that's what
there's
I'm saying.
nations.
It's not that though, bro. It's not
Yeah,
that.
I know. No, I'm just setting it up. Then there's nations, right, who are actively doing things, but they're not online promoting it. So the people who are doing the talking appear to be the ones who are geared up and wound up, ready to get things popping, and the ones that actually have it popping are sitting back and taking care of the real work. So what I'm saying is, how do we get people who are so energetic and ready to make this push to understand that there's a format, there's a way to make these things happen, right? And it's not just by a group of people who identify with something and create an identity, right? And stir things up. Like, there's way more to it. Like, as a Moor, you understand law, right? Moors are meant to understand law. You can go into a court and say everything how you want to say it, but if you don't say it the proper way, if you don't hand these papers in the proper way, under the format we're living in, it's not even going to be recognized.
If you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, but that's everything. That's everything. You don't know what you're doing, you're gonna get jammed up.
But the thing is,
the
people who don't necessarily know what they're doing are making the most noise, and I feel like that's dividing the people.
That's what you call a pundit.
So how do we remedy that?
You exercise the view option on your computer and stop engaging things that sound like rhetoric. If you listen to your own self, remember I said they set it up so you don't listen to yourself. They got us trying to go by the gut, but our people go by the heart, because the gut is the foundation in a sense. But that's where the acidic. That's where everything gets ready for waste to be expelled. We go by what we feel in our heart to balance what's in our mind and our gut. You dig what I'm saying? So because we live around a bunch of sodomites, they worship the bowels. So they want us to go with how you feel here, because they know that they're giving us all types of GMO foods and all types of shit to make us not know what we really feeling. We don't know if we constipated. We don't know if we flatulent. We don't know. So we just go along with stuff. So it's the same thing with this knowledge stuff. Like, you can have all the knowledge in the world. If you're a bad person, you're a bad person. The knowledge is going to come out eventually, and it's going to expose that you're a bad person. You see what I'm saying? And you're not doing this for no thing. You just happen to be real good at retaining information. And because you see me or you on TV and you done whatever, you think that this is easy, that you could just, it's not. And it's not it's rewarding in the context that I'm following what the Creator put before my path to do. But it wasn't something that I set out to do. It's something that I felt that I could contribute based upon a time where I felt almost like helpless. So I started to look within self and realize that what I can contribute is clarity, because that's what I'm searching for right now. So I know it's mad other people who want to be Moors and all of that and want to get that too. And soon as I did that, 1,000 other dudes came out that was backed by the machine at that time, which they call the conscious community or whatever, that had just started going online. You see what I'm saying? And creating this presence and all of that. And when they couldn't destroy the Moors physically by making them look crazy with their little debates and stuff, they decided to just take it into a point and get Moors to destroy themselves by creating endless debates, endless rhetoric, endless feuds and stuff that really have nothing to do with nothing. And these people are just doing that to waste our time, so that way they could do it. And then there's another contingent that is creating these false narratives and stories about Moors and stuff like that, because they want people like myself or other Moors that's in the community to come out and actually say what it really is, so they can learn, so they could get the real knowledge. But because of their hubris, they don't want to just hit a brother up on an email. You know what I'm saying? They want to get it, dissect it, and regurgitate it, spit it back out how they think they could do it. So that way they can get likes. So that way they can feed their family and do whatever. And there comes a point, I think, now where we're so much seasoned that you can kind of see that on people now. It don't have to be every time somebody getting exposed and all that. This stuff that you've noticed about people beforehand that makes you a thing. And then when it does happen, like, oh, see, like we could all see these conscious community train wrecks when they was happening.
Yeah.
We all view them. But
Yeah.
in essence, we were all voyeurs of these black males and black females' destruction. And we felt it was justified happening to them based on what they did to us. But in essence, all they really was doing was trying to come up. You see, if these people were straight selling dope, people would forgive them quicker. You know what I'm saying? If niggas was in jail, these people committed murders and came out, they would sometimes commit them and try to forgive them quicker than give them the benefit of the doubt of them trying to actually come back to the community and say, oh, well, you know, I did this and did that. So that's why a lot of these dudes is being shut down now. A lot of these females is being shut down now because the internet is cleaning itself up. That's what this Elon Musk thing and all of that is about. It's starting to get to a point where you're going to be faced again with an opposing opinion. And for the past year or 2 years and a half, they've been able to squash any separate opinion. So again, I don't even have Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Well, I have it, but I don't use it because of what was happening.
I'm not
You know
very
what I'm
versed.
Yeah, I don't have none of that, and it's kept my life more simpler. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't have 50 million, because praise be to Allah that people who support me put me in those arenas to be seen and shared and stuff, which then helps what I'm doing or whatever. But I'm doing more stuff with the actual people day to day behind the scenes than I'm putting up on the internet, because people don't need to always know what I'm doing for the people in the community. People I'm helping in the community need to know that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's who it's for. I'm not arrogant or ego driven enough to think that what I'm doing, I'm gonna save the whole world by myself. And these dudes be out here talking and making you feel like yo, let's get it, let's do it now, whatever. And that is just talk. They not on it like that. I know what I could do based upon what I can do. I can't do that for nobody else. You know what I'm saying? And whether it's the Aboriginal movement or Tonkinist movement, we can do it. I just laid out a plan. Like you asked me, I laid it right out how we can do it right now. But it takes people who understand that we can do this, and you can be Wampanoag, and you could be a Seneca, and I can be a Moorish Alawite, and he could be a Camp 13 Hebrew, and we can make this happen. All we got to do is give money to it and let the administrative body of these things that we create make it happen. Like any other business, any other corporation. It's easy. It's not even hard. Matter of fact, they want us to do it. Yeah. But see, if you take stuff as a minority or black, is different than when you get it under stuff like BIPAC and these other things that people really don't understand, that are worded, big ups to my brother Rex, that are worded in a way that turn you off from it. When if you really get into what these grants and what these things are really talking about, it's really talking about us as indigenous people, indigenous specifically. Yet, you know, people like labels and groups and pageantry and costumes and stuff. So they want to get behind what's popping. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude got mad more likes, so he must know what he talking about. That's how people still think. We don't think like that. So we're gonna win. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't think the way everybody else do. If everybody else is thinking this way and that thought is leading them to the edge of the cliff and your thought is taking you to the oasis, we're on the right side of history. And I think we are, because of stuff just like this.
Absolutely. Now, you know, I'm seeing a lot of, and maybe people that are making comments, you know, they're trying to have the default conversation. Are we Moors? Are we not Moors? We didn't call ourselves Moors. The point I'm trying to make in the show is that we need to move
like, damn,
past
I just
that
go through all of that.
argument. No, I'm not even asking you that. I'm saying we need to move past that debate because there's more pertinent things that need to be discussed than us debating whether or not we are or we're not. We're all suffering under the same oppressive regime, right? So we need to be having conversations that are going to provide remedy for that. And then once we handle these things, then we could have those other family conversations. You know what I'm saying?
My thing is, you are what you feel and you present yourself to be. When I say that we're Moors, I'm saying that based upon the last ruling empire globally that was holding it down for so-called humanity, bringing it out of darkness, was people that looked like us, right? And they themselves were referred to as Moors because they carried on the ancient Egypt, so-called Egyptian, ancient Mayan, Phoenician, whatever culture or high priesthood of Ainu that we today refer to as science, physics, mathematics, whatever. And we carried that into whatever society that we decided to birth into. So if you feel that you're not that, that's fine. Whatever you choose to label yourself as, that's cool. That don't change the fact what I see based upon the research and the information and the life that I've led and what it has shown me, not just in this country, but being this, like this in other countries, claiming this, saying this in other countries, and they telling me, yes, you're right. I didn't even know there was still more left in America. Like, what? Yeah, but I'm also this. I also have Tasalagi and Southern Creek and all of this in me. Oh, so that brings you to the Native American? No, the American Indian, because the Native Americans were the ones that were brought over through the Siberian situation that happened in the 13th century, which is why we had to get people like Mansa Musa, Abu Bakari, and them to come over here and help us hold this shit down. There's books on this shit, so everybody knows but us. That's my big thing. Like, we are still trying to find a reason to be separate. I look at it like this: if you feel that you're a Moor, you are. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, now the journey becomes, how do you justify that and make that understanding real for yourself, where it is a viable lifestyle option, the same way it is to be a Hebrew or a Christian or whatever. But guess what? That's only one aspect of you, because people have Moors synonymous with Islam as if that's the only thing we are, when I just told you that we predate all these religions being referred to as this. Not because Romans called us Moors, because this is what we called ourselves. Because this, again, was related to the ancient priesthoods that was coming down to all of the different world cultures that eventually was stewarded by us and culminated in 492, that they erroneously referred to as 1492, which then led to the fall of humanity, the fall of all of the Americas and everything else. So if you feel like you're not a forebearer of civilization, i.e. a Moor, because that's what it really is, then you're not. Case closed. You could just be an Indian or be whatever. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that either. All I'm saying is, when it comes to the proper context of where to apply this thing to get your money and your land and your inheritance back, you need to know what that is. Okay? And unfortunately, or fortunately, the Moors, real Moors, know how to make that happen. I just laid it out. Has anybody laid it out that simple to you before?
I mean, like,
because these guys are concealing shit. They're concealing it. They don't want us to win. That's what we gotta understand.
that's obvious. And so let me
After this one, I got a flash.
yeah, that's fine. So basically, yeah, I don't definitely want to keep you too long. I just really want to I definitely want to thank you for coming on here.
Thank you.
And as I stated, people want us to get into the debate conversation, and that's not,
get into the debate. Like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, that's not where I want to go with this. I wanted to speak on what. So just give me your overall wrap up on the condition of today's Aboriginal movements and what could possibly be outside of what you've already, you know what I mean? Like, because I actually wanted to get into talking to the psychology of people today, but we could possibly do that another time. Because I think that has a heavy
Definitely.
effect on
Definitely.
the
Yeah, bro.
conversation. You know what I'm saying?
That's a
Like
good point, bro.
we've been through a lot as a people, and you know
That's a good point.
So just basically just wrap it up. Give us your overall opinion on the current Aboriginal movements, primarily the ones who are forging the way in terms of being vocal about us being from this land.
I think any Aboriginal movement that's moving forward and striving to bring the conversation back to us being from here as autochthonous individuals, I'm in full support of, whether they like Moors or not. You're still kicking divine and national movement information, whether you see it like that or not, because whether you accept it or not, the prophet in them was the first one talking about that. You dig what I'm saying? So we just really parroted what was already basically said to a smaller group of people that is now transcended to the entire country. Think about that. That message was for everybody, but at the time, only the Moors got it. How everybody else get it? At a time where they done convinced everybody else that they from somewhere else. They're making us all think we immigrants. How I'm an immigrant when I'm born in Brooklyn? How I'm not a American Indian or have American Indian blood when my grandmother is Washoe and all of that. But because I put on Fez now, all of a sudden that part of my bloodline is dead. Like that don't make sense. That's what I'm saying. We're all things. Why are you trying to limit yourself to just be one situation? Now, when it comes to your political situation, that's where the Moorish thing can come in, because Moors, because they have a religious society, because they have a tenant system, and they function under Muslim customary law, which doesn't have anything to do with necessarily being a Muslim. It has to do with the type of law that they practice. That is a couch for the ancient laws that we was doing. And under that, it says that everybody that live around us is treated as such, like us, whether you us or not. So I'm not excluding nobody from the human family. So what you going to exclude me now because you done read some book that was written by some dude who's a Freemason who really got a fez in the closet, but because he wearing feathers at the powwow, you think that he got the real skinny on it. But then when I shake the nigga hand and give him the lion grip, let him know I see you. And the fact that I'm open, because my prophet came and got rid of all of the secrets. He deaded the secret societies. That's why you could go on Amazon right now and get a book on Freemason for Dummies. So if that's the case, why niggas still joining that stuff? I tell you why, because that is what allows them to keep this puppet game going. And they don't want humanity to reach its highest level of itself, because then it will transcend humanity and become something more. They don't want that. So they want all you niggas locked down into some religious system, which again is not a bad thing. It's only bad when it's concealing everything from you. So again, man, our biggest issue is ourselves. We're getting in our own way because we're constantly trying to support each other's theory as for who we are instead of just being who we are. If you don't feel like you're more, then you're not. How about that? If you feel like you're more and you are, hit me up, houseofbella@hotmail.com, or I could put you in touch with somebody else who may be noble and all of that to keep you away from the dirty Moors that's out here trying to do skullduggery. The same way we keep you away from the dirty Hebrews or the dirty Christians or the dirty RBGs or the dirty Egyptians. See what I'm saying? I don't care what they are. If they dirty,
but we need to add something to the list: the dirty Aboriginals.
Thank you, the dirty Aboriginals. You know what I'm saying? And again, my only issue with that too is find. If you're Aboriginal, that's the name of the thing, cool. But if it is that, it's supposed to represent some sort of nation. Right now, the only nation on earth that can be called the Aboriginal nation, right, is in Australia. These are the guys that gave Julian Assange his passport when they was trying to get him out. That's the only ones on the planet with their own passport that say Aboriginal nation on it. So unless you got some joint like that, and you're using the term Aboriginal, you're using it in the aspect of a descriptive, meaning that it's not literal to you. You're speaking about something euphemistic generally when you say that. If you're going to say that you're Aboriginal, then what type of Aboriginal are you? So you're Aboriginal what? You're Autochthon what? What type of Autochthon? What type of origin? That's like saying American. When you're outside the country, you're an American. When you're inside the country or at the country, you have to declare what type of American you are. And that's it, man. You can do it, babe. You can start, babe. And that's the main thing. So if you guys, and so you could be Aboriginal all you want, but if you can't back it up with some sort of actual real nation, some sort of real nationality that goes with that, you're just calling yourself something and hoping that people are not going to dissect what it really is. And that may explain the stagnation in some of these so-called movements that are going by the situation and the disharmony that's being occurred with it, because they're not, it's not like these guys are creating like sweat lodges where Moors can go and natives and American Indians can go, that look like us, can go and do their thing and actually get into the sweat, put the ancestors into that. Like, I've done that. Like, I've sewn headdresses. You dig what I'm saying? Like, I've made like ceremonial pots. Like, I've done this type of shit. Like, I've gone, it's documented on my website, www.aseertheducateers.com. I got a joint in there called Native Blood Live from the Shinnecock Powwow. And on that, I show you the juxtaposition between the Shinnecocks, and then the next day I'm at Labor Day and you see basically the same people. And everybody's called West Indians, which is another name for Moors. So again, man, let's learn to love instead of hate, and let's stop striving to create differences when there's more stuff that we could be doing to get money for the nation, to create lobbying situations, to be able to then pay like the rest of these dudes and Vanguard and Blackstone and Vivendi and the rest of them set up businesses and all of that to then go and repatriate and get all of this money back that they got for us. But it's not going to happen for us as individuals. No entrepreneur has gotten anybody out of slavery, has gotten anybody out of any revolution. So I don't care how much money Kanye West got. He ain't doing what Elon doing, but he doing what he could do. He making clothes, right? He making what you call it, apparatuses to learn how to get into music and shit again. Like, he's doing what he could do. But in that, when we reach that level of the game, we supposed to be. And all of what we have is backed up by our blood, which is the land. But we got to get the proper protocols together to make that happen. And unfortunately, we can't do that on the internet. We got to go back to like smoke signals, my nigga, like writing letters. Remember we used to do that? I be doing that.
Okay.
Like, I write letters to these congressmen, these people, whatever. And they let me know. Like, there's so much stuff I can show people, but I'm not out here to do that. I'm out here to do exactly what you're doing, brother. Inspire people and help when you can. But until everybody's ready to whatever, people like me and you got to get together and figure out what we're going to do. You know what I mean? And then when my name come up in the circumstances, somebody trying to throw dirt on it, you defend me the same way. If your name come up, I defend you. And then they learn that they can't turn us against one another. If they ain't talking about that, they ain't talking about spirit, which is the most high birthright, inheritance, nationality, they're your enemies, B. Straight up at this point. And that's how I live my life. And thus far, you know what I'm saying, is working. But when I was trying to run out there and get everybody down with it, hey, we all Moors and all that, nah, man. All I did was got my children taken from me. All of my friends stopped dealing with me. Like, these niggas is not backing you up. You got to have it in your heart. And that's what it says in the Circle 7. It say that's where Allah exists. So, again, bro, thank you, man, for having me on.
Thank you for spending some time with us. We appreciate you.
Man. Thank you, guys. Thank my queen for holding me down.
Thank you, queen, for allowing you to spend this time with us.
You know how it is. You know, happy wife, happy life, man. We want to keep that thing going. And anybody in good relationships like that, especially in autochthonous communities, man, whether you're Hebrew, God body, Moors, whatever. If you got a little community and you want to build it up like that, there's ways where we could establish confederations that each community pays into. We ain't even got to see each other. We ain't even got to see each other to make it happen. We could just be putting money into the fund every month, $20 every month. By the end of the year, you know what that's going to do? know how much influence we be able to buy? Which y'all niggas want a basketball court, which y'all want a community center, put pressure on these niggas. You know how many Republicans is willing to sacrifice their own children right now for votes? And we as Moors can compromise a block vote. So that means it would be like 25,000 people voting at one time for this one dude. You know how much power that is?
So
we still want to be the internet talking shit and all of that. So
and let me say this. I feel that, just to wrap it up, I feel like a lot of the people that are online saying certain things, they speak like that because they don't answer to elders. They don't have proper supervision that they sit under. How do you feel about that, just in closing?
Yeah, they don't believe in no God. They don't believe in no higher self. They don't believe in no elders. They don't believe in nothing. And I don't blame them. Because the elders in our generation, these niggas sold out. I can't blame you. Can't even hold you to that. You're right. These niggas did sell out. They all became Freemasons. They all feeding us poison. They all acting like they not down with it. They all trying to discourage it. You're right. But we all ain't like that. The babies ain't like that. What about them? What about all of this? So all I'm saying is, there's people involved with that shit that don't want to be down with it and is willing to do things to help people like us on the low. But we got to have shit together. And what I'm saying is, these niggas always want to do it on the internet because they always looking for girls. They looking for likes. They looking for people to listen to them because this is the first time people ever listen to them in their life. See, I be looking at it from different angles. I be trying to be more like humane because I'm an Aries, double Scorpio, so I could just literally forget people is alive. You know what I'm saying? If I don't keep them in my purview like that. So I'm striving to be more, open for that. So in that, you calling, you see what I'm saying, was a perfect testament of that. So again, I want to thank you for that, brother. And always, man, if anybody want to hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com. If anybody wants to do a donation, you could do so to Cash App, capital money sign, D, capital D, S418. Please check out www.cordialorganics.com. And again, man, anybody want to holler at me, you can do so, man. My email, I just gave it. If you have any issues or problems or anything that whatever I said triggered you to feel away or whatever, don't be like these dudes. Be a man, be a woman. Email me directly. You dig what I'm saying? Whether my email or Facebook, man. Like, let's stop making videos trying to expose each other, but nobody exposing the World War III. Nobody exposing the fact that they starting the food shortage. There's nobody exposing that. We worried about Cardi B and who Kodak got shot by, or you know what I'm saying? How much money Bad Barbie got. This is why, because all of those people are enemies of us, but we're okay with it because they entertain us. So let's stop being entertained and start edutaining. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Turtle Gang Entertainment. We came for.
Love, brother.
So, brother,
Peace,
thank you again. Appreciate you. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this again. And have a great night. Walagunta walking. Okona Guruwatin. Ilan Kumaki. Peace and blessings to my relatives.
Went out.
Yeah. I just saying peace and blessing to you, brother, and thank you for coming on here. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to do it again.
Peace and blessings to you. Thanks to the audience, man, for having me on. Even the people that don't like, you know what I'm saying? Like, at least you tuned in and said peace. I really appreciate it, man. Love to your families. Be safe. Again, man, peace to the gods, peace to the earths. Salam, Abaragani, Tatanka. Peace.
Peace. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up real quick. Once again, I want to thank our guest Aseer for coming on the show. Thank everybody for tuning in. Yeah, we're trying to establish communications and not so much be debating every little point that doesn't sit well with us. We're trying to move forward and create something that's going to be a little bit more conducive to growth and to real learning. So thank everybody for coming on. I gotta check off. So yeah, if anybody would like to make donations to Turtle Gang, you can hit us at Cash App, money sign TGE NYC. We'll be back soon. I'm gonna line up another guest very soon. So everybody, please keep looking out for us. And we definitely gonna build. And have a good night, everybody. Peace and blessing. And thank y'all for tuning in.